Peace, peace, peace. I am Philip Roundtree, and you are tuned into the July 19th edition of Rhetorically Speaking. Props to those of you who are tuned in on Instagram. As always, head on over to YouTube at PhilMSW. I ain't even got the information joint that I usually post up, but head on over. You get to actually feel the Rhetorically Speaking experience because it's kind of dope. I actually learned over the weekend how to make sure y'all can hear sound. You know what I mean? So I'm not going to exclude y'all from some of the sound bites that we got going up, because usually I'm just like, yo, go ahead over. But I know some of y'all don't necessarily follow directions, right? So head on over to YouTube at PhilMSW. Speaking of YouTube, props to those of you who are watching on YouTube. As always, hit the subscribe button, hit the share button. My daughter is no longer in a paid private school, but I still need to recoup that tuition that I spent the last 3 or 4 years. And maybe I'll have a conversation about that and how I'm anti-black kids going to predominantly white private schools. It's a hell of an experience, not only for me as a parent, but for the child, man. For the child, this, trying to teach white folk has never been something that I desire to do. And when you're in a part of a system like that, you could have the amazing skill set in teaching and educating and have the purest heart. But there's so many gaps that exist that they are just negligent, right? That they're negligent about. And so we made the decision like, no, Shorty, you got to roll. I'd rather you go to public school, even though it's not defined yet. I'd rather you go to public school. I'd rather you go to another school instead of this predominantly white private school. I don't think any black child should go to a predominantly white anything, whether it's public school, private school, university, because getting your needs met as a black child, a black adult, it's not going to happen. As an adult, you can better manage it, you can better navigate it. And when I say adult, I'm not even talking about 18 to 21, which is your typical undergraduate age of typical age of an undergraduate. Not even then, because if you're coming from a predominantly black setting, predominantly black school, it's a culture shock for you. I'm sure many of you have heard my stories about going to predominantly white institutions for undergrad, master's degrees, hell, even a doctoral degree that I'm getting right now. You got to deal with white tears, you got to deal with white fragility, and the shit is exhausting and it's annoying. But I digress. And last but not least, props to those of you who are tuned in on Facebook Live. Head on over to YouTube as well, but I'm going to let y'all chill. I'm going to let y'all relax and stay a little while. So today we're going to have this conversation about Stephen A. Smith. I know I posted about it last week that I was going to come on and have these conversations, but energetically, I just didn't have it, right? And so when we don't necessarily have it energetically, we usually have something to motivate us to continue on. In that instance, it's usually money, right? So if you don't feel like going to work, and you might love what you do, but you don't necessarily have that to give, that your paycheck might be affected, impacted, right? So when I was working on radio, it was times that I didn't feel like going in for 3 hours and having conversations. However, they was cashing me out. And so you got bills and things like that can be a motivator. And so with this platform, with Rhetorically Speaking, it's not to say that I don't care about it, that I'm not passionate about it, that I don't love and enjoy doing it. But at times, we all need to just take a break. We all need to relax. We all need to reset. And so that's what last week was for me. Hence the reason why I'm bringing this topic on to this week. And also, it just... when I was sitting thinking about what I was going to talk about today, I was like, man, people are past the Stephen A. Smith conversation already. And it only happened probably about 4 or 5 days ago. People are past Whitey on the Moon, which happened 4 or 5 days ago. We don't necessarily give ourselves opportunities to sit with things, to think about it, so we can speak intelligently and articulate our thoughts about it. And so I almost went on. I was like, all right, you know what? We're going to talk about Keisha Cole's mom dying. Rest in peace to Frankie, who died after overdosing, dealing with addiction for much of her adult life. And so we know how difficult addiction can be. And that's coming from a perspective of somebody who hasn't been addicted, right? But who've known individuals to be addicted to, whether it's something as simple as marijuana, or like alcohol, crack cocaine, heroin, and just what that's like trying to be a loved one and supporting an individual who's experiencing that. So definitely love to her. I was like, all right, I'm going to talk about that. Then I'm like, all right, you know what? Let me talk about what's happening in Cuba. Then I realized I have no idea what's happening in Cuba. I know. I'm not somebody who wants to get their information from Instagram, or to get their information from Facebook. And so if I'm going to go in, I'm going to go in. I'm going to do a deep dive. I'm going to read some articles about it. I might watch some content related to it. Or I'm going to say what I'm saying now. Listen, I have no idea what's taking place in Cuba. But as always, I'm for the people. And that doesn't change. But again, we got to be mindful and know when we need to step back, when we need to step away. Because that's critical to our wellness, something that I talk about so often. So we're gonna have this Stephen A. conversation, right? I'm gonna play these back-to-back videos, and these were Stephen A.'s comments made on his television show First Take on ESPN. Stephen A.'s salary came out within the last 2 weeks. Initially, people thought it was $10 million, but it turned out to be $12 million. He's the $12 million man, so he really gets to do whatever the hell he wants. He gets to do and say whatever the hell he wants. And so I'm going to play this clip, and I would love to hear from you as to what you think the consequences should have been, because we know that he's still there. We know that he's apologized for his comments to one specific group, but we'll talk about that after I play these videos.
But when you talk about bona fide stars in the National Basketball Association, we can pick at least 15 to 20 of them. Half of them are on this damn roster. There's no excuse to lose to Nigeria. Some dude, Gabe Namdi, who goes by Gabe Vincent for the Miami Heat, Caleb Agada, Namu, or however the hell you pronounce his name. You give up 60 points on threes? And I understand that baseball is an international sport itself in terms of participation. But when you talk about an audience gravitating to the tube or to the ballpark to actually watch you, okay, I don't think it helps that the number one face is a dude that needs an interpreter so you can understand what the hell he's saying in this country. And that's what I'm trying to say.
And so those two comments were made by Stephen A. Smith on First Take, as he was, in the first clip, he was discussing the USA basketball losing to Team Nigeria in an exhibition. And what was egregious about that was in talking about USA basketball and how they underachieved, and he's reading off the names of the players on Team Nigeria, and we know that their names aren't colonized, right? Their names aren't a product of white supremacy like Stephen A. Smith. Hell, like Philip Roundtree. Right? They're privileged in that regard. And so, in attempting to speak these brothers' names, he says, or whatever the hell their names are. And I was taken aback. First, what immediately came to mind was an episode of A Different World where Whitley was a substitute teacher. And she was taking attendance. And she said the name of a militant black boy. That's what he was supposed to be. He was supposed to be militant, right? Think Nation of Islam. Think Pan African. Matter of fact, think Pan African, right? And so she messed up his name, and he said, "Dag, sister, you don't respect me enough as a black man to get my name right." And that's what I immediately went to. It was extremely disrespectful, right? It was extremely disrespectful. Not the fact that he couldn't pronounce his name. Because hell, that happens. We're human. But to poo-poo it and say, whatever the hell his name is, like he's insignificant. Now we understand that the shtick that Stephen A. Puts out into when he's on the air. He's supposed to be Howard Stern-esque, a shock jock. These outrageous takes that I don't even know if they even believe what they're saying. It was so egregious that the Nigeria national team, whoever runs their Twitter account, put out a post. Multiple posts saying it was disrespectful. And so what stood out to me was that I didn't see an elaborate apology. Now, somebody let me know if I'm wrong. I didn't see an apology like the one that he gave Asian individuals, Pacific Islanders, Asian Americans. I missed that apology. And when I sat back and thought about it, I'm like, and again, correct me if I'm wrong. If he apologized, then hey, I'll definitely say he did. But far too often, does he get on First Take and disrespect black men and black boys in particular? Right? Kali says, how is that different than the devaluation of black men in hip-hop? I'm not sure if you're speaking specifically to Stephen A. Smith, but we know how he talks about you can't even stay off the weed, and how he has to exaggerate that when he's talking about people like Josh Gordon, former Cleveland Brown, former Seattle Seahawk, former New England Patriot, who has a substance abuse issue, which stems from trauma. He admits it. When he's talking about individuals in the NBA who's tested positive for weed. When we talk about Larry Sanders. Obasi, he says he apologized, but it paled in comparison to the detailed apology he gave the Asian American community. Makes sense. But too often has he gotten on screen and been disrespectful to the black man, to the black boy. It's this idea of tough love, I'm sure, with so many of our elders. And yes, Stephen A. is an elder. He's in his mid-50s, early to mid-50s. And so, comparatively speaking, when you're talking about 21-year-olds, 23-year-olds, he's their elder. But it's too accepting, and it's always been accepting on platforms like ESPN, and it's not just endemic in something that takes place at ESPN. This happens on various platforms. where you can be blatantly disrespectful to black folk, to individuals who make up the diaspora. In this case, the Nigerian players who work their tail off to even get to that stage. And so instead of highlighting them, instead of elevating them, he took an opportunity just to poo-poo their accomplishments. And while doing that, disrespecting his own heritage. You know what I mean? When you think about it, he's disrespecting himself, his lineage. Unless he one of those good old black folk where his existence started once they got off the boat. And so, yeah, I'm sure that apology paled in comparison to the Asian American apology. And speaking of that, right? When I sat and listened to that, I didn't necessarily think that he was off base. I didn't necessarily think that he was off base. If you're looking at it from strictly, and I've had some conversations with Asian folk only purely on social media, in attempting to articulate the point of when we talk about marketing, right? When we're talking about pure marketing, yes, not being able to speak English may hinder him here in America. It's not going to stop the sale of jerseys. People are still going to go to the ballpark. Right? People are going to tune in to watch the Angels. I would make an argument that it's worse for him to play for the Angels as opposed to not being able to speak English. Because that too influences marketing and what have you. But when we talk about the ability to connect with an athlete, when we look at it from marketing in that standpoint, right? When we think about the Mark McGuires, the Sammy Sosas, even though English wasn't Sammy Sosa's first language. When we think about Ken Griffey Jr., their ability to communicate to us definitely played a part in how we viewed them. It definitely, because we feel connected, right? And so it would be foolish to say that doesn't play a part. But I think where Stephen A. went wrong is to highlight that as being such a problem. And we know that where we are in today's society, first, we're having speaking about Asians, Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders, in any way that's not affirming, you're going to have to again, you can't speak and be ambiguous. It's going to come across as you're anti. That's the climate. That's where we are. I'm not saying that's right, wrong, or indifferent. We're hypersensitive. We're hyper aware. Right? But when he's not talking about the other aspects that'll impact Shohei Ohtani's, and I'm sure he practiced that name, right? I'm going to make sure he got that right. Those other influences, such as playing in an awful place like Anaheim, playing on the West Coast, and then the smugness that he the way he relays his information, over the top. And you see, if you listen to the end, Max agreed with him. Like, hey, that helps. Now, we know that Major League Baseball has a long-standing issue with non-English speaking individuals. We think about El Duque Hernandez, who played for the Yankees. They got rid of his interpreter. They said, you've been here long enough. You should know English. Problematic. When we think about Ichiro Suzuki, who played baseball for 20 years between the Seattle Mariners and the Florida Marlins, he too still used an interpreter. First, it's smart, right? It's smart. You potentially get to deflect. You could potentially tell your interpreter, hey, if this is off the wall, hey, just change it up a little bit. It's a buffer. Because we know how the media is. Look no further than Sha'Carri Richardson. Maybe if there was an interpreter there, if she didn't speak English, maybe the interpreter would have been like, oh no, I'm not asking her about her mother's death. He could have been that buffer. He, she, or they could have been that buffer. But I did get a chance to see the apology, and I'm not playing that here. And not only the one apology, but he offered about 4 apologies. He offered about 2 via social media. One attempted to explain what it is that he meant. Then apologizing for how it came across. And then 3, the next day he came on First Take. Why? Because we recognize that in this day and age where we are, what's this, July 19th, 2021, 7:28 p.m., that you cannot speak ill of Asians, Asian Americans, or Pacific Islanders due to the influx and violence against this community that's taken place over the last year and a half. Instigated by your former president, not my president. And so we're hypersensitive, hyper aware. But as previously said, we're not hypersensitive or hyper aware when this comes to black folk. These comments are acceptable, especially if it comes from another black man. Because like, oh, it's cool. I guess this is like saying nigger pride. So it's cool. They do that, so why wouldn't they be able to disrespect somebody's name? Let me see what y'all talking about. Obasi says, Dr. Bobby Wright put it best. Some of the most dangerous blacks in the world are many of those brothers and sisters who finished graduate schools with honors and yet operate against the interests of blacks because of their Eurocentric orientation. Listen, agreed. You guys send me that quote too, good brother, because I think when I set this off, that's going to end. Completely agree. Hence the reason why, and you've seen it, this conflict I have when I talk about mental health and black mental health in particular. What it looks like, the treatment modalities that we use, the research or lack thereof, speaking to our experience, the current medical model. I've been less outspoken about mental health. Because what it is that I was doing and what I still continue to do, right? It's a form of harm reduction. It's putting the blinders on to these issues that are truly impacting black and brown people. Like, how can we have this conversation about therapy if we're not talking about poverty? How can we have these conversations about depression, anxiety, about the over pathologizing of black folk that takes place, the overdiagnosing of black boys with ADHD, the overdiagnosing of black men with bipolar disorder. Again, all stemming from their medical model. But then on the other hand, a part of me is recognizing, hey, to continue to fight, we need to be well in some regards. And so if I'm sending you out into the fire every day, I might not be able to get you a whole fire suit, but I might be able to get you a Scully, some fireproof Timbs, right? When you go out there, and that's what therapy is. Shout out to Obasi for sending me that. Right? But again, that's another conversation that we can definitely have at a later time. Because you know I'm here for that conversation. So what we're going to talk about now is white folk going to the moon. White folk going to the space. And let it be known, call me Kyrie Irving Jr. I don't believe nobody went to the moon. It just don't make sense for me. I don't think the technology was that advanced back in 1960 to send folks to the moon. So, I'm not going to say that the earth is flat. I'm not going to go that far. But I got questions. Because I'm not trusting what it is that they telling me. You dig me? But last week, apparently, Richard Branson, who owns a whole bunch of shit, I believe he owns Virgin. I believe he owns Fox or Fox News. He went out in space. And so I don't even know if I necessarily believe it. I guess I believe it. I'll capitulate a little bit. All right, I believe it. But I ain't really got much to say about it. Because why? My man Gil Scott Heron said it all. So we're going to play that. And then we out.
Poem said, a rat done bit my sister Nell with Whitey on the moon, and her face and arms began to swell, and Whitey's on the moon. I can't pay no doctor bills, but Whitey's on the moon. 10 years from now, I'll be paying still while Whitey's on the moon. You know the man just upped my rent last night? Because Whitey's on the moon. No hot water, no toilets, and no lights, but Whitey's on the moon. I wonder why he's upping me. Because Whitey's on the moon? I was already giving him $50 a week, and now Whitey's on the moon. Taxes taking my whole damn check. The junkies make me a nervous wreck. The price of food is going up. And as if all that crap wasn't enough, a rat done bit my sister Nell with Whitey on the moon. Her face and arms began to swell, and Whitey's on the moon. Was all that money I made last year for Whitey on the moon? How come I ain't got no money here? Whitey's on the moon. You know, I just about had my fill of Whitey on the moon. I think I'll send these doctor bills, air mail special, to Whitey on the moon.
Shout out to Gil, man. I mean, listen, man. He's the prognosticator of all prognosticators. Whitey on the moon. I bet you try to send your doctor bill to Richard Branson, it ain't gonna get there. Hell, I don't know why Bezos don't take us to the moon with him. As much as we order from Amazon. So if we really talking about making that change, are we gonna keep giving them our change? Listen, man, I appreciate y'all coming through. I'll be back tomorrow. I got class at 8, so I'm definitely gonna be on at 7. So then I can I don't know, just not pay attention in class. But you ain't hear that from me, like Miss Bonita said, right? So listen, man, I appreciate y'all for tuning in. Check you out tomorrow. Peace.